Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast. This is the podcast where we have digital discussions in the worlds of pop culture, social media, sports, and wrestling. It is our hashtag week of wrestling here on Popternative. I am joined by professional wrestler. I'm with John Skyler. John, welcome to Popternative.
Thank you for having me. I am looking forward to talking with you and talking all about pro wrestling and my career. So this should be fun.
No, absolutely. So I just think that talking to other wrestlers, I think you can agree with me, the last kind of 3 years of pro wrestling has been unbelievable. There's definitely been a wrestling boom. Indie wrestling has never been stronger. What do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. It's definitely, even because I broke into the business in 2008, and even since 2008, there's been such a huge swing in terms of, even the people that are on the scale of WWE have come from the independents now, as to where when I broke in 2008, the word independent wrestler was kind of a derogatory word almost. It was used that way anyways, and now it's more embraced than anything. And even outside of WWE, all the independents that are popping up, I know you talked about having, off air, you were going to say, you were saying you're going to have Nathan Cruz on. Independents in Britain are especially popping up, and those are crazy popular right now. And here in the States as well, there's tons of different options for people, and it's really interesting in the era that we're in of digital download. I think makes it a lot easier for people to access so much stuff. And you got like the High Spots Network, you got the New Japan Network, you've got YouTube, you've got all this cool stuff, as to where when I was a kid watching wrestling, you had to wait an entire week to tape something. So it's really cool that there's so much variety out there, so many options for people, and it's great to see the independents taking off.
You look at some of these cards are unbelievable. Some of these indie cards, I mean, Speedball Mike Bailey, who we had on the show, he's fighting Keith Lee in Ireland. I mean, that whole card is unbelievable. The talent out there that is, like, aside from Ring of Honor, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, it's just phenomenal, John.
Yeah, it's really weird, man. Even, again, I don't want to harp on, back in my day, but when I was, breaking in 2008, you didn't hear about this many guys. And now, you go to any independent, speaking from a wrestler standpoint, and there's so many guys in a locker room at any given place that you would want to work with or wrestle. And that's a comforting feeling, because it means that things are moving in the right direction across the board.
You've had the chance to wrestle in Ring of Honor, NXT, WWE. Now you were jobbing, but you kind of had that opportunity to kind of network and meet people. Is networking, do you think, still a big thing in wrestling, or do people kind of come in, do the match, and leave, or is there a networking component to all of this?
There's definitely, the guys that are smart definitely still network, and there's more to pro wrestling than just showing up to a show, doing your match, and then leaving. That's when I was over in England with Brian Dixon's All-Star Wrestling. That's how I met guys like Nathan Cruz, who I became friends with. And so, when he was over here in the States, I was able to get him on, a couple of independents over here. And that's because we networked, we talked, and, you can create so many opportunities for yourself just by meeting some of the guys in your locker room at your local independent. And then also branching out on social media. Social media is such a huge tool now in getting your name out there and building your brand as a pro wrestler. And if used the correct way, social media can be very helpful and obviously detrimental if not used properly. But it's just crazy how everything is right at your fingertips now. And I would definitely say networking is definitely a big deal. It's still today.
We had Beer City Bruiser from Ring of Honor on the show. When I asked him about social media, he kind of said that wrestlers are kind of using it in different ways. Some wrestlers have one account, some wrestlers have a personal account. They have the personal family accounts, and then they have their wrestling account where they actually tweet as their gimmick in the ring. What do you think about that? I find that very interesting.
That is interesting. I know in terms of myself, what you see is kind of what you get. I'm very much the John Skyler you see in the ring is definitely the John that you would see out on the streets. They kind of are very much a mirror image of each other. So it's not too much of an extension for me to have one Twitter account or have one piece of social media where, you call it being in character and gimmick, but, there's not really a gimmick here. It's just kind of myself. So I also just kind of say whatever comes to mind. And, I think that's a very natural approach to things. And so far, anyways, knock on wood, I feel like social media has been very helpful for me and not so much on the detrimental side.
No, absolutely.
Like it has for, unfortunately, a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. It will, that will definitely happen. Double-edged sword, as they call it.
Yep.
Another thing, too, that I find really interesting is, it is safe to say that pro wrestling is some of the best entertainment out there. Like, just going to a pro wrestling event, and I think that's kind of why indies are kind of becoming more and more prominent, because people are realizing how much fun they have at a wrestling event. And I've had a lot of people, they go to a WWE live event, and then they meet people there and say, oh yeah, there's like a local show next week. So it kind of, because they don't realize that there's other wrestling and it's not just WWE. So then that kind of helps. Do you, you might be biased because you're a professional wrestler, but the entertainment value of wrestling and local shows is next to none, John.
Yeah, it's I call it live action theater. I really, in a way, and I'm familiar with this because I went to college at the University of South Carolina, and while I was there, I minored in theater a little bit, and I had the opportunity to go to a lot of theater shows. And the thing about it is, where we stand out above everybody as pro wrestlers is really the only kind of entertainment of its kind. If you go to theater. And somebody starts yelling stuff out from the crowd, they're going to fall in line with what they have scripted and their lines and stuff like that. As to where with pro wrestling, you're almost encouraged to bring the fans on the ride with you. And if they start maybe heckling you a little bit, you can adapt to it in the ring. And that's how you're kind of taught to, play off the crowd a little bit more, so you don't really have to stick to a certain path. And that's the kind of creative freedom that we have as pro wrestlers. But also, it's very physical too, and that's, I guess, why it's kind of like its own kind of entertainment. It's the only breed of its kind of entertainment, because it is physical. Guys get hurt every single night, and guys and girls, and it's just very, very interesting. It's a combination of, everybody kind of sours upon the words of sports entertainment, but that's what it is. It's two worlds of entertainment and athletics colliding together, and so that's really cool, because both those things were always up my alley as a kid. So it's been the perfect job for me for the last 10 years.
I've had the privilege and honor of having many wrestlers like yourself come on my show: Rob Van Dam, Austin Aries, Donovan Dijak, Moose, Beer City Bruiser, and the question that I ask them a lot is, what are the things they love the most about wrestling? And there's a big list, but I think the ability to kind of wow the crowd is something that always stands out. Is that something you love? Is that on the top of your list of the things you love the most about being a pro wrestler, kind of creating these moments for people that will last a lifetime?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I know how wrestling made me feel as a kid when I first turned it on, and how I was hooked. And anytime I can go out there and perform and have that same kind of effect on a youngster or a child or even an adult, anytime I can tap into people's emotions and make them feel a certain way about my performance, that's really the art of it all, to me anyways. And that's definitely the most rewarding part of it, because as you probably heard by interviewing all those people you've interviewed, wrestling has a lot of not so fun parts sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think you strip all that away, and the most rewarding thing as a performer is to go out there and perform and be in the ring and be able to take people on an emotional roller coaster. And I'm not going to try to do a shameless plug here, but recently...
Plug away. That's the point of having you on. Plug away, man.
Recently, me and Corey Hollis from PWX had an unsanctioned street fight back in October, and PWX recently released that for free online as a holiday gift to their fans. And it's fun to watch even that match for me, and still go back and, I'm not necessarily watching my performance. I'm watching what the crowd is reacting to, and I'm watching how they jump to their feet for certain things and stuff like that. So if people have the opportunity to go check that out, it's a fun little emotional roller coaster if and it plays right into what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. Let's talk now about John Skyler. Let's focus on John Skyler. We're talking about pro wrestling, but I'd like to talk about John Skyler. How could 2017 be described in terms of what happened for John Skyler, and what could people expect from John Skyler in 2018?
2017 was a very humbling year for me because a lot of 2015 and 2016 were spent with me and Corey Hollis on the road with NXT. Now, I know you said we jobbed, is what I think you said earlier, but, that we had TV matches.
Do people get offended? Do people get offended by jobbing? Like, I apologize if that offended you.
No, it didn't offend me.
I'm sorry, man.
I don't necessarily consider them job matches anymore. I think if you look at the TV product across the board nowadays, guys don't have much time at all for their matches. That's just the way it is. So I like to call them TV matches. But we also did a lot of live events too, where we were traveling on the road too with NXT. Through the Carolinas, we did WrestleMania Access. We did all that kind of stuff in 2015 and 2016. And in 2017, not so much. We were kind of doing our own thing on the independents, and we got to put this masterful storyline together, which kind of plays off real life and a lot of the hard feelings that me and Corey have for each other. But it was a humbling experience, 2017, because you kind of have to, once the calls stop coming in, you kind of have to reevaluate yourself. What can you change? What can you do different? How can you better yourself? How can you better your game? And that's kind of what I did throughout 2017. I really tried to make all this fun again for me. And, when you have injuries or, I've been doing this 10 years now. I recently had my 1,000th match of my career just a few months ago.
Congrats, man.
So, thank you very much. And, the injuries do pile up. Whether none of them thankfully serious, but you do have your nagging injuries, and having to work through all that, and hopefully just hang on to hope for maybe getting a big break. That's kind of what it was for me. Another thing with Ring of Honor, I was in the top prospect tournament early in the year, and I felt like I stood out above and beyond everybody else in the tournament, and haven't heard anything back from Ring of Honor. So. That's kind of a humbling thing too, and you want to hope that hopefully you hear something soon. But at the end of the day, I'm going to keep doing what I do. That's wrestling. I love wrestling, and I'm hoping by the end of 2018 you'll see my name in a lot more places, and people will be reaching out to me to come be a part of their show, and not the other way around.
No, absolutely. You mentioned at Corey Hollis, the tag team. Talk a little bit about how you prepare yourself for a tag team match and then a singles match. And is there one that you prefer over the other?
I always get asked that question a lot. I feel like tag team matches creatively are a lot more fun to put together because you have all sorts of elements to play with in terms of you've got 4 guys out there, you've got a referee, you've got the tagging in and out, the different rules and aspects of it. I think there's a big misconception of the term gimmick match. People hear the word gimmick match and they think of, cage matches, ladder matches, table matches, no holds barred matches. But a tag match is a gimmick match. The gimmick is that you're tagging in and out with your partner. So it's kind of fun to establish those rules, and I think you can really take a crowd on a real emotional roller coaster ride more so in a tag match than you can with a singles. At times, anyways. That's definitely debatable. Personally, I enjoy singles matches because I think that's where my body of work really shines through, is in singles matches. Mm-hmm. And there's really, only 2 people you have to worry about in a singles match, and that's you and your opponent. And you don't have to rely on, are the third and the fourth guy going to be in the right place for the next thing, and all that. So I definitely think I prefer singles over tags, but the creativity there in tag matches is second to none. I mean, I enjoy watching. I'll put any great tag match up to a great singles match any day, especially guys like Arn and Tully, and the Midnights and the Rock and Roll Express, Heart Foundation Rockers. I'll put any of those next to a good singles match any day of the week. And it looks like tag team wrestling has kind of had a resurgence too as of late. So that's good to see.
No, for sure. You also, and I think this is pretty cool because it's one of those things where you mentioned all the content out there in the digital era, and Pro Wrestling Illustrated put out every year top 500 wrestlers of 2017. You were in that. You were ranked 372. I think that's incredible just because we talked about the fact that there's so many wrestlers out there. It's such a big industry. So when you're on kind of lists like that or featured in like cool segments, I mean, yeah, it gives you confidence and motivation, but it's just one of those things too where you can just kind of maybe sit back, relax, and kind of just like think about all the hard work, and it kind of paid off because someone is kind of like Pro Wrestling Illustrated is kind of give you that recognition that you deserve.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. A lot of people, especially with the PWI 500, mostly people that are in the industry, kind of blow their nose at it a little bit in terms of it's a work or it's a gimmick or whatever.
I don't think so.
And that's cool, but it's still cool to be recognized as one of the best, even if you're one of the 500 best. Mm-hmm. It's still cool to be recognized in some, whether it be print, photos, video, whatever the case may be. Anytime your work can be put out there and recognized, it's definitely a good feeling. Me personally, I never sit back and I don't really get the chance to relax or enjoy moments like that. For me, it's things like when you're in the car after performing on Monday Night Raw or performing on an NXT taping or a house show or, something like that. That's when I get the chance to kind of relax and reflect a little bit. But for me, it's usually what's next? What's next? What's next?
No, absolutely. We'll wrap up soon, but another question I have for you is you've wrestled a lot of cool people over the years. Who would you say is not your favorite match, because I don't think that's really fair when wrestlers get kind of asked that because there's so many. But is there a couple of matches that stand out and guys that you've wrestled where you're like, wow, this is cool? And who do you want to wrestle in 2018? Is there someone that you're kind of interested in wrestling in 2018 that you haven't already?
That's I can spitball a couple matches at you real quick. I personally, the one that tops my list is an NXT live event match I had in 2015 or 16. I can't remember now, but it was against a guy named Riddick Moss, who's doing some pretty good things with Tino Sabatelli on NXT. Me and him had a singles match in my hometown of Columbia, South Carolina, at the Township Auditorium, where I first saw professional wrestling as a kid. So that just kind of hit on so many levels with me because, that's where I fell in love with pro wrestling, was in that building. So it was like wrestling in Madison Square Garden for me. That was definitely like a highlight of my life, not just my career, but my life. Getting to wrestle in the Hammerstein Ballroom was really cool against Kurt Stallion this past year for Ring of Honor. But some of my favorite opponents, first of all, like on the independents, anytime – I get to do stuff with, Corey, like the street fight that's up for free now. That was, it's always fun. I had a series of matches with Cedric Alexander before he went to WWE that were a lot of fun. There's a guy down here, the Man Scout Jake Manning. Me and him have a long storied rivalry, too, that we had some brutal, bloody matches that were fun. And then, through NXT and WWE and TNA and Ring of Honor and all the other stops I've kind of made along the way, and even before that, I've gotten to wrestle guys like Johnny Gargano and Cody Rhodes. And, I used to team with Dash Wilder before he got signed to WWE. And we had great matches with guys like the Bravado brothers. And going to China and England and places like that, I teamed with Pete Dunne for a while over in China, and we had a series of matches over there that were fun. Guys like Kevin Steen or Kevin Owens, getting to work with him, getting to work with the likes of, there's so many of them. Steve Corino, C.W. Anderson, they've been a big part of my career. They kind of took me under their wing there for a little bit. Just coming up here in a few weeks, I'll be wrestling Juice Robinson for the first time, and I'm really excited about that because he's really done well for himself since leaving NXT and going to New Japan.
CJ Parker on NXT.
Yeah, I'm excited about that, and also in 2018, there's a laundry list of guys out there now that I think are really talented. So it's hard to just pick a couple off the top of my head. I've been real impressed with There's a lot.
Yeah, there's so many. But that's kind of like when we started. There's many of them, so it's fine.
There's a lot. There's a lot in WWE that I would love to work with. Adam Cole is somebody that's always been kind of on my bucket list of somebody to get the chance to step in the ring with, because a lot of people have compared me and him in looks and in style, and I think it would be a fun match. Man. But yeah, on the independents, there's just so many guys. You know what? I'm looking forward to stepping into the ring with anybody that will help me make a name for myself. How about that? Feel like that's a bit of a cop out.
Open challenge here on Pop Turner.
Challenge. I'll tell you one, since he's come back to the independents after getting let go from WWE, is Joey Mercury. Because Mercury is somebody that I went and did the Bulletproof Dojo for a while. With him and Luke Gallows, who's another good friend of mine. And Joey Mercury is one of the underrated minds of our business. And he's one of the smartest men that I learned more from Joey in about 3 days than I have in about 5 years. So he's somebody that I definitely want to step in the ring with real soon.
So many, man.
But there's a lot of them. I'm hearing a lot about this guy. Now his name escapes me. Now I feel silly for not remembering his name. Man, he's a northwest or northeast guy. Man, Josh Briggs. I think that's his name. I'm hearing a lot about him. I hear a lot about.
I'd like to see you wrestle the King of Bros, Matt Riddle.
Me and Matt Riddle have never stepped in the ring together. We've done tons and tons of shows together, and we were supposed to wrestle each other earlier this year for PWX, but unfortunately he had an injury or something that caused him to pull out of the show. But yeah, Matt Riddle's somebody. I'm really impressed with Darby Allin. He's another one that I've seen a lot of here recently, and he's somebody that impresses me. And Maxwell Jacob Friedman, me and him and Jonathan Gresham are currently a part of the Dream Team with Stokely Hathaway and on Powerbomb TV. But, I wouldn't mind stepping in the ring with him one day. There's a lot of them, man. The independents are nuts right now.
No, it is. And that's why. Well, we'll wrap up. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. And all the best in 2018, man. Thank you so much for everything you do for pro wrestling. And we're excited to kind of follow your journey and kind of keep up to date with John Skyler in 2018. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and if anybody's listening and wants to book me, they can find me on Twitter at @TheJohnSkyler. I've got a passport, so I'm willing to travel just about anywhere in the world. So please tell Nathan Cruz I said hello.
I will, for sure. Thank you. I'm excited for that one. All right,
Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Thank you. Well, this has been Popternative. You can catch previous episodes of Popternative on our YouTube page. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, popturnative.com for more content as well, and you could also subscribe on iTunes. Until next time, this is John Skyler and PD Beats signing off for Popternative, part of our week of wrestling.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.